Welcome to all of our attendees. Thank you so much for joining us for this panel presented by Folk Alliance International for Folk Unlocked. My name is Jared Rivers. I'm the Membership and Technology Manager for FAI. And to begin, we recognize the complexity and privilege of gathering online today by sharing a digital land acknowledgement written by Adrian Wong of Spiderweb Show in Ontario and adapted for this webinar. Since our activities are shared digitally on the internet, let us take a moment to acknowledge the legacy of colonization embedded within the technologies, structures, and ways of thinking we use every day. We're all using equipment and high-speed internet that's not readily available in many indigenous and marginalized communities. And we invite you to join in acknowledging our shared responsibility to make good on this time and consider our roles in reconciliation, decolonization, and active allyship. We hope that you'll share your thoughts and observations in the Folk Unlocked chat box. And this panel is available for viewing for the remainder of the conference once it has finished airing at its scheduled time. I want to take just a moment to introduce our moderator. Mary Bragg is here with us, an incredible artist and entrepreneur. Her latest album, Violets as Camouflage, was one of my favorite albums. I listened to it on loop and got to hear Mary perform a couple of those songs in the Folk Alliance International offices before all the touring stopped. And it was a high point of my year to get to see her. And I'm so excited to have Mary on this panel. Mary, why don't you take us away?
Thank you for those kind words. Hi, thank you, Jared. Hi, everybody. Welcome to this circle. The four people around me are about to blow your minds. I'm totally honored to be moderating and having this conversation with four of our absolute stalwarts, heroes, audio geniuses. You're going to get to know them more properly and hopefully very personally and casually as we go along. So we're talking about audio today, mostly to give y'all a window into what it's been like for these engineers and producers during the pandemic, what they've been working on, how their lives have changed. We're about to pop right to Rachel Moore, who is each of these engineers and producers is one of my favorites, both to work with and learn from and be inspired by. So why don't we, I'll tell you guys, if you are a diligent student, you in the description of what this panel is about, you'll see that it says the following, which will also remind us all here today what we're here to talk about. Okay. One of the things many artists have still been able to do during the pandemic is write and record. Some forming temporary pods and recording in studios, and some via remote collaboration or a combination of the two. These esteemed award-winning producers, Grammy-winning producers, compare notes on how their work has or has not changed in the last year, and we'll provide a look ahead at what technologies and other changes that they have seen impacting the world of production in this year and going forward, because everything affects everything else, right? So first topic is how the pandemic has or has not changed things. Rachel, tell us about how the pandemic has affected your work life on a project-to-project basis, how it's affected your work. Why don't we just take a second, since this is how we're doing the bios. I'm just going to read this bio because these people are so fantastic. Okay, Rachel Moore, landed in Nashville. Oh, come on, this is great. Rachel Moore, landing in Nashville 8 years ago, Rachel Moore worked her way through the ranks as an engineer at the historic Sound Emporium Studios. Being at the center of the Nashville music scene for many years, she's worked with the likes of Trisha Yearwood, Lucas Nelson, Brittany Howard, McCrary Sisters, Garth Brooks, Billy Gibbons, Alison Krauss, Kelly Clarkson, Daryl Squat, Della Mae, Margaret Price, many more. In 2019, Rachel engineered the two-time Grammy-winning single for I'm With Her, Call My Name. Great song. Great recording. In early 2020, Rachel began work with the world-renowned producer T-Bone Burnett. So, Rachel, talk to us about how the pandemic has been annoying, life-changing, etc. Maybe there are some positive things. I don't know. Tell us how it's changed your life.
It's been a gradual learning through the whole process. When the pandemic initially happened, I was in the middle of a couple projects, had actually just finished tracking them. And so when the quarantine happened, we resorted to doing overdubs and stuff remotely. And so we would send stuff to people, and we did that through the quarantine. And we kind of waited it out for a bit. I don't know how everyone else felt here, but I was reluctant to get back into a studio for a while over the summer and stuff, but obviously you need to keep working. So there was a lot of communication that happened. And Mary, we were one of the first projects that worked together after the quarantine. And it was a lot of communicating as far as what everyone's comfortable with, what everyone's boundaries, and making sure everyone felt comfortable, because our jobs are so personal, so vulnerable already, and then to have this huge thing hanging over our head, it took a little bit longer, I think, to get people to let their guards down when they were making music. And so I think the biggest thing was just communicating more before the session, during the session. I know for me personally, I didn't want to work with anyone, for instance, that didn't want to wear a mask. And so I was a little pickier about who I was working with. Definitely only people really that I knew kind of had the same outlook as me. And so I was just a little more careful, kind of as the summer and fall of last year went on, to just do what needed to be done to keep working, but also keep everyone comfortable and safe. A big software that I've really used is Audio Movers. I've closed mixes with that now, because generally I kind of like to have people with me when I'm closing mixes, but that wasn't always possible. So I used Audio Movers, which allows you to kind of, I bet everyone here has used it, but allows you to broadcast what you're doing to someone else. I did a mastering session that way, which was new for me. I'd never done something like that.
And tell the listeners, the viewers, more about how Audio Movers work. It's done in real time, right?
Yeah, so there's about a second delay, but it's super handy, and it was honestly a lifesaver last year for me, in tracking and mixing. And like I said, I did a mastering thing. But basically, so whatever you have on your screen, if you're in a Pro Tools session or whatever, you can send it over the internet to someone else, wherever they're at. I think I sent as far as England, and there was a second delay. And they can hear exactly what you're hearing. And it was a lifesaver. It really was.
So are you like texting people, getting their feedback as it's occurring? Or are you like giving them a chance to listen down fully? Or do you? We
would do both. A lot of times we would Zoom. So I would have like a laptop on the side and then Zoom in if they want to. Sometimes I was on a session where a producer was in Canada, I think, and they just wanted the ability to check in and out. So they had the link, and they would just kind of listen to it here and there, but they weren't, dialed into it all day. And that was super useful. Cool. So that's Audio Movers. I used it a little before last year, but man, it's really become a lifesaver for me. And it's probably something I'm, now that I know what it's capable of, it's probably something I'm going to use a lot going forward.
Totally.
Even after this is all done. But yeah, I think,
awesome.
As far as COVID, it was a lot of communication and figuring out where everyone's comfort levels were when we were working.
Isn't it so bonkers how wearing a mask changes your ability to make music with people?
Yeah, you don't realize how much expression, like I realize
from here down.
I smile with my whole face, and people can't tell when I'm like agreeing with them. So
totally.
And then when you and I were working together, trying to communicate with each other across the room was sometimes tough, and it's it's everyone being super patient with each other and understanding like we're all going through this, and yeah, communication.
Totally. Did any of the rest of you use audio movers? Have you used it much during the pandemic? And how did it go? If so,
Not I.
Yeah, not me. I think I'm one of the only, maybe we're like one of the only ones. Everyone else I know has been using that, and I just haven't.
gotcha. How about you, Gina?
I have not used it, but I'm about to start mixing a project this week that that's all they did was audio movers to make this record. So I'm really excited
Wow.
to just like download all the files and and check it out.
And that was
Gina-
a super common thing too that I heard, like people, especially this Nashville machine that happens here, they're used to going in and doing demos in 3 hours. And I knew people that were plugged in and, they would all be available for a 3-hour block during the quarantine. And then they would just bounce the files back to each other, like, drums, bass, guitar, which is insane to me. And it's these huge records that are on the radio, so that's crazy to me. I didn't do quite that much, but yeah.
But that's assuming that everyone then has their own home setup, like even the steel player and all of that. I mean, so how were the quality of files you were getting back?
Right, and how does that change your job as a mixing engineer if you're getting back these levels that are super bonkers?
Oh yeah. Well, luckily, I think a lot of the players in Nashville are at, they're on a different playing field. And so a lot of them did already have home setups that were pretty, complicated or a lot going on. And I knew a few people that took the time during COVID or during quarantine to set up their home rig. And it's going to be, a source of revenue for them in the future, because now that they have that going for them, they might have been a touring musician or whatever. And now they're able to do that going forward. And they learned how to kind of engineer themselves. That was the other thing. I don't know if anyone else here dealt with that. I was kind of like the hotline for all my like player friends and like people setting up their home rigs. Like they would call me for like basic stuff. And yeah, I don't know. It was funny, but
Oh yeah,
happy to do it because I wasn't doing anything else. So
Cool. Gina, let's talk about any new agreements. This is a little bit touching on what we were just talking about, but new agreements that might have been made between yourself or producers in general, artists and musicians for in-person recording sessions, and how have your communications been around COVID-related issues? But before you answer the question, I see that I need to introduce everyone to you. Please allow me to read this beautiful bio. Gina Johnson is an audio producer, engineer, and mixer living in Nashville. She works on a range of music and has worked with artists spanning from Chris Stapleton, Jason Isbell, John Prine, Lady Gaga, Christina Perri, Casey Musgraves, Brenda Carlisle, Amanda Shires, Ashley Monroe, Rustin Kelly, and more. Gina enjoys being part of the Recording Academy, serving as a governor on the Nashville chapter board and co-chair of the membership committee. Thank you for being here, Gina. Tell us about those new agreements you might have made with people that you've been working with this year.
Well, unfortunately, we had the loss of John Prine in early April of 2020. So to me, that was super real because I was working with him a ton and I'm really close with his family. So, some people weren't believing it at first. Some people weren't thinking that it was something that we needed to really rally behind and just be safe. And I think through that experience, I was just, I was not going to do anything without masks or with, too many people. So as far as that being said, I started using my home studio a lot more, not only for mixing and overdubs, but for tracking space, which I never really thought I would get into. So kind of shifted gears on that some. And that gave me more control over sanitizing things and, wiping down everything, making sure that people are wearing masks. And it was slow to start, like Rachel said, which I thought was, I didn't even know what was going to happen. Were we going to also be out of work like all the live sound engineers? My fiance worked for Zach Brown, and they were one of the first people to call it. So our world was kind of shaken up. a ton, not knowing what to expect. So I was very happy that things started turning up, and I actually went to New Jersey this summer and did a record with Christina Perry. And we were getting tested twice a week. We were all wearing masks. I drove there with a truck full of gear just to be safe, because I figured flying, you could get there and then test positive. And so that was anxiety ridden. But as far as agreements and just communication, I would text people even the day before coming over, maybe even to listen to final mixes, and say, if you feel at all sniffly or you have a cold or anything, just like, we can postpone it, and having grace with people, and just understanding that this is a tough time and some people are taking it more serious than others. So I just tried to keep a really safe space for people. And, I didn't leave my house. I started a grocery ordering service instead of even going to the grocery store. Because I figure, if somebody gets sick outside of me, okay, that's one project. But if I get sick, then that's a ton of projects I have to reschedule, and then, deadlines and everything. So it's just been a year of having grace for each other and empathy, and you never really know what people are going through. I think anxiety and everything is out the roof this year, or last year. I feel like it's not over yet.
Yeah, totally. I'd like to ask a bit of the same question for each of you. Have any of you come across an experience that required a moment of being in person so far during the pandemic that you kind of bumped up against how to handle something when you knew that maybe someone's approach to COVID was not one that you might be comfortable with? I think sometimes we defer to the client and what their standards of safety are. Can any of you share a situation that was maybe difficult that you had to sort of pause and approach it with grace?
Well, I guess this is kind of funny.
You don't have to name names. I don't.
My first session back in a studio at Sound Emporium, I, was very much like, hey, everybody's going to be wearing masks. Are we getting tested before? I mean, Nashville's made it super easy. It's a drive-through testing site. It's free. It's like, just get there early and then you get your tests within 24, 48 hours. So I'm like, of course. And that was not necessarily the way that they wanted to do things. But I was told, by different people in the session that everybody will be masked and social distanced. And at one point, I was on Pro Tools editing, a couple takes together, and I thought it was just me and the producer in the control room, and it was B. And so it's a smaller control room, and all of a sudden I hear a sneeze in the background.
Oh,
and
my gosh.
and you know what sneezes have been like in COVID. It's like so anyways, I just like waited. I looked, I just felt like particles falling, and so I just like waited. I turned around, and I was just I kind of had it, other than like people not wearing masks, just because it was so fresh. And we really didn't know a ton like we know now. And I just looked at this keyboard player who was about 24. I'm not calling out any names. And I just said, and he wasn't wearing a mask. So I just said, just think of a sneeze like a fart. Just please walk out of the room, because you're going to be embarrassed. If somebody smells your ass in the control room, you're going to totally be, fucking up the vibe. Like, let's just not.
Yeah.
So anyways, he immediately, and I just asked everybody, it's like, can we just wear masks, please? Like, I just, I'd feel more safe. And legit, not one person came back into the control room without a mask on. And, I probably couldn't see his face blushing under his mask. But that was probably the most awkward calling out thing I had to do, but
That's pretty great.
it's been great.
I'm going to use that. Think of it like a fart. You should be very embarrassed. Cool. Let's move on. I think we have another couple topics we want to get to, and we want to, I believe. Oh yeah, okay. Our next topic is your approach to working with artists and teams. And on this, we will introduce the incredible Shawnee Gandhi, who is a Grammy Award-winning producer, engineer, and mixer, known widely for her contributions to the Americana and folk genres. Throughout her career, she's worked with Alison Krauss, George Jones, Dierks Bentley, Kelsey Ballerini, Sarah Jarosz, Sierra Hull, and the Mountain Goats. She received a Grammy for engineering Jarosz's folk album and has been nominated twice for Best Engineered Album, Non-Classical. Shawnee, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
I want to hear about your philosophy in recording, working with artists. This is a little cheesy, but do you can call it an approach, but is there a particular philosophy that you go into a session with that you try to uphold, whether it's subconscious or whether it goes out the window on day one? Is there something that you try to adhere to when you're working with artists? And has the pandemic changed the ability to execute that philosophy?
Ooh, God, it's hard to say because I think as all the other ladies here, we sort of juggle between producer, engineer, and mixer. So if I'm talking like if we're tracking, which I think is what you're getting at, or producing, I guess for me, I especially before embarking on a whole album, which could take anywhere from 2 months to like 2 years, I definitely want to make sure that we have a good vibe and that we even get along, and that the artist feels free to share his or her opinion and vice versa. And sort of all those things are harder to do over Zoom. It's hard to go get a beer with someone and like see how they throw down, or like I especially, like to cut a few of their demos, which they might just have on their iPhone. And it's just a great way to show them how the recording process of mine goes, and without committing them to anything. And all those little like give and take moments, a little bit out the window and become very much like email driven, which I am the worst person with emails. So that like I've probably lost several jobs because of that.
That's not true, by the way.
God,
not true.
I know I'm the worst. And so it's just like that has been a real bummer. And then the other thing as a producer, because I'm not the kind of producer that is like, we have to write everything together, we have to do everything. I'm more like this like sort of overarching, let me just make this whole process exactly what you heard in your head. And part of that is curating the best band that I can think of. And that's just not the best players. It's the best players for this artist's personality, and the best drummer that knows the bass player. And it's all this time that I spend, like, okay, this is going to be great. I've got the best studio, I've got the best band, it's going to be awesome. And then like right before a session, like someone gets COVID or has a scare or what have you. And suddenly like all your, hard work of curating this amazing situation kind of goes out the window. So I'd say like it's just been more frustrating than anything, but I don't know if my whole aesthetic has gone out the window.
Well, that's nice. Well, I think it probably speaks to your ability to continue to care as much as you did at the outset. I think it's as an artist, I have seen various levels of interest in the producers that I've worked with over the scope of a project change. And as a producer, I've seen that in myself when I'm producing for other people. It's like, okay, I'm really excited about something in the beginning, and then you hit any kind of bump, it's like, oh God, but if you're able to commit yourself to something like that, I can't imagine how much attention to your own personal humility even it might require to, for example, get through a project that might be 2 years long?
Oh.
Was that an exaggeration?
No. Nope, definitely not. I mean, those things happen, like labels want things recut, then the band has gone on their like 6-month summer tour. Like, I never mind that, and like half the time I'm always like grateful for the extra time. So that never bothers me. And I would say like one good part about the pandemic is that I actually, unlike Rachel and maybe the rest of you guys, I don't like having mixing sessions attended. Like, I really don't like it. And so I can usually get away with it. And now I just have this like wonderful excuse. I'm like, oh, shoot. I'm just going to have to send this to you. You write it down, send it back, and I'll do it. Like, so that has been nice.
Do any of the rest of you also prefer to mix alone? Trina?
I feel like we haven't heard from Trina. I want to know.
Trina, we're saving you and your big questions for the big finale, but I'd love for you to feel welcome to chime in on any of these things. Each of you, of course, are welcome to chime in on any of these things as we go along.
I've been mixing alone at my house for 15 years. So the pandemic came and absolutely nothing for me changed at all. That's a fact.
Great. That's so great.
It's not necessarily great. It's just what it is. No, I mean, it's what made it work for me. And so, but this isn't my question time yet. But
oh, sure it is. Well, it's, I think the worst part about doing a panel on Zoom is that I think we really should just be, sitting next to each other in front of an awkward, conference room table and people seeing us basically just having a conversation. But anyway, the internet is forcing us to do it this way. Okay, so but you know what? It is time for you, Trina. Let's move on to the incredible introduction for Trina Shoemaker. I see that she is incredibly succinct in her accolades. 4-time Grammy Award-winning producer, engineer, and mixer. She's been in studios for 35 years. She's a mom. Trina Shoemaker.
I had mentioned it could go there. My bio was on my website. Sorry, I'd have done a little more than that.
Don't apologize. I think it's great, and also like I've been going to Folk Alliance for so many years that I've always been kind of one of those obnoxious bio people that I like to sort of do my homework on all the panelists and get to know people. So I hope that all of those of you watching will go and dig up the incredible backstory on each of these people. It's outrageous the amount of records that have been worked on by this group, and also the quality of the records. I can guarantee that each of you have listened to their work without even realizing it. That's the beauty of engineers, is that they're, in my mind, I think they don't get as much credit as they should in the recording process, for sure. Okay, Trina. My question for you is really sort of a directive, if anything else. What traits have you appreciated the most in artists and musicians? It could be this year or at any point. What traits have you appreciated the most in artists and musicians? Why don't we start there? Just in terms of personality traits, how people work, how people ask questions of you.
I'm in a very strange place in my career where I almost never see the artist because I do a lot of mixing. I'm not nearly as busy as everyone else on this screen right now. And that's also just how it's come down. I work and I still make my living, but I'm very reclusive. I do not go out. I don't see people. I'm not on social media. I know that that's to my great detriment, but it doesn't interest
necessarily.
No, it's not. It's just it doesn't engage me. It bores me, and so I can't. I have a very overactive mind. I'm in the middle of writing a fiction novel that I've been working on for several years.
Wonderful.
Pure fiction. It's a love story. It's got nothing to do with my life and rock and roll. And I have a son. I love songs. I love equipment. I don't really once the song is recorded, I mostly don't want the artist around at all. Although this year I did step out and produce somebody that I love. I will only produce now if it's something that's so spectacular to me. And I don't mean famous spectacular. I don't mean rock star or, somebody who's selling lots of records, something that's so magical and I find so engaging that I will give it my life, because what it's come down to for me now at this point, I'm almost 56. And I started when I was 17. I only have hours left. That's all I can give. I'm not going to be a millionaire, and I don't want to be. I'm not going to. Everything that's left in my life now comes down to the hours that I have left, and I will not spend any of them in the studio or in my studio with music that I don't like or that is bad. And I will not work with people who can't sing anymore. Now, that means I don't work a lot, but I've got hours and I bill myself by the hour. I don't care who they are, whether I'm producing, recording, or mixing. You pay me by the hour. I have valued my hours at a set rate. Everybody pays the same thing unless I give you golden ticket discounts like I give my friend Oliver Wood Brothers. Okay, he gets discounts. But I issue those. I don't do producer contracts. I don't care about points. My deal is, you sell records, you better give me some money or you are not my friend anymore. and I don't hang out. I have shied away from everything to the degree that I don't really belong on this screen anymore.
Oh, Trina.
No, I'm not saying that. It's not self-deprecating, and I don't need compliments. I honor you all for doing it, because believe me, I know what you do. And very few people do. They don't understand. And it's not about men or women. They just don't know what goes on in there. I'm going to close by saying one more thing. I have emotional attachments to analog equipment that are unhealthy and indecent often. And so my relationship to the gear is far more real in my life than a relationship to an artist, and a relationship with a song. So I'm very odd. Therefore, I've had no problem with COVID. And when I did produce, I told everybody, all the guys, happen to be all boys in that, I'm the only one in this room. I got tested. I can't wear the mask when I'm listening and when I'm working, because I have to do this.
Yeah.
I have to touch my face so fucking much when I'm in front of the speakers so I can hear. And if the mask is there, I'm like, I can't. So we all agreed I would be the only person. I'd be the only freak non-masker in the room, but only me, and I got tested. So
and that's something that works for your workflow and how imperative it is for you and all of us to say, here's what works for me. In some cases, take it or leave it, and hopefully a number of cases.
I actually did the same when I was working at Sound Emporium B, actually. I just didn't allow anyone else in the control room because I can't hear. As soon as I got sounds and I was kind of feeling a bit more comfortable, then it was fine. But it was like, I'm going to face forward. I'm going to have my mask on. Everyone stay behind me. And at certain points, I'm going to have to pull it down because I feel like you hear through all of your orifices. And it sounded like I was like underwater. My head wasn't vibrating. And it's my flipping job to get sounds. It's what I'm hired for. And so I'm like, you guys stay in the control room. I will play back through the cans. And if you want to come and listen, I will leave the room.
That's right.
And that was my deal on that.
Trina, thank you for being so candid.
You're
I think
welcome.
these things are only interesting when people get so honest, and thank you for being so brilliant. I wanted to follow up on your what I think you were aiming at, and we can say hey to your son.
Waylon, come here. These ladies got to see you walk in the room. Here's my son coming in a kilt.
Oh my
gosh. Lean down, let him see you.
You are amazing.
This is the best.
This is where you end up.
What's up, Waylon? This is great. Thank you so much for this moment of joy. Oh, wow.
The kilt is legit. He got that kilt and he's like, hell, I love this thing. I'm wearing it. And I just said, wow.
That is not incredible.
That's great.
That's so incredible. Wow. Okay, so you were pointing at autonomy with your work and sort of needing that in your space.
Me? Still?
Yes. Yeah.
It's not autonomy. It came
Okay.
down to fear and the need to be able to be very, very creative without having to navigate the myriad moods of artists whose problems were not my problems. My job is the sound and the song, and to serve the song like the Lorax serves the trees. And I'd also been made to feel uncomfortable back in the years when I was around a whole lot of very, very famous people all the time. And I didn't enjoy it. I felt like that wasn't me. And I understood even then that I would never have that career, that I was going to go away to where the sounds were, where I could just work with the sounds and serve the song and not have to deal with egos that were just, I guess, too big for me, just too much for me. I didn't want to be drowned out. I wanted my little creative ego to have its own place, which was only the sounds. I didn't want anything else. And that's where I am now, where I only work with people who want my sound. They want me to do what I do. So there's never any back and forth. I send the mix. They love it. They may have a small list of revisions, but that's just fun stuff. But if the mix is a colossal fail, I am not your mixer. I'm not going to chase down a whole different drum sound because that's not what you recorded. I want to make a special point here, especially to you here with me today, people out there. This is going to take 1 minute. Do I have that minute? Because this is important.
Yes, you do. Please.
Back when I started, there was no such thing as, producer, engineer, mixer, really. There was the producer and there was an engineer. The producer was the mixer, always. Might not have been actually on the faders, but that person was in the room calling the mix. It's the mix is a function of production, not engineering. The mix is the end game, all that work, and it's the mix. So the producer was always there, and I'm talking about Dan Lanois and that whole, realm. They were good, and they were always in the room. Then there came a time, and I was there to witness that very time, where producers started sending other producers their records for them to mix. For example, Chad Blake would said something to Andy Wallace. Andy Wallace was a producer, engineer, and mixer. He's a great mixer. So the producers would send him the record to mix as a producer, not a mixer. And I came up mixing in that world. So now I'm a producer that mixes. If you send me your track, I am also producing it because you're not there. There's no producer there calling the mix. It's me and 35 years of experience. And I insist, not about points. I don't care about that anymore. I never did. It will say produced by whoever, mixed by Trina Shoemaker, right on the back, right underneath that production credit, because again, mixing is a function of production, not engineering. And understand that and take that credit for yourself too, and get your name next to the producers. And any producer can email me and contest that, and I will win that argument. Thank you.
Thank you. I love
very much for saying that.
right,
So
and
good.
I love hearing the that you witnessed that transition.
And I'm not a
again.
bitch, by the way. I'm really nice to people and respectful of artists, but it's ridiculous.
No,
The
I mean,
mix.
that's a small thing. It's a small thing to ask for, especially these days where I can't tell you how many things I've been left off the album liner notes completely. And it's like, I feel like I was part of the team, but no.
No, but if you guys are mixing, and I know that you are, make sure that the producer knows my name as the mixer will be directly under yours as the producer, because I am also a producer and my mix is a production. It's a fun. You can just tell them, call Trina Shoemaker. She said production is a function of the mix, and she can prove it and the timeline upon which it occurred, when it occurred, how it occurred, and how it's still real. Thank you. I'm talking too much. I'm going to give it
you
up.
are not
No,
talking too
please.
much.
That's awesome.
Please.
Rachel, Gina, Shani, any follow-up notes there before we move on to our final topic? In response to all the things Trina just said, which were mind-blowing.
Just absorbing it through all my
I
pores.
know. I think what's so funny is that I usually ask of producers almost the opposite of what you're saying. Or maybe it's because I know I'm not going to get, quoted as the producer, but it's sort of like, hey, by the time I get your stuff to mix, like, yes, I love to add my thing, but it should be pretty clear what the intention was. It should be actually extremely clear what the intention was. You should have gone in there with the sounds you wanted, with the, it should all come to me, and I just like shape it into this like lovely shiny-esque package. But like, yeah, don't ask me to make your drum sounds something that they aren't, unless
unless my name as mixer is going directly under yours as producer.
Yeah.
And that is the criteria. I have told so many artists, look, I can turn this thing into what you want it to be, but your recordings are subpar based on everybody being able to record at home, not necessarily always the greatest stuff. And I will give it everything. I'll give it all of my knowledge, all of my body of history of work, but that's production, and you got to list me as such. And if you don't want to do that, I'm not going to save your track. I'm not going to fix it. And even if it's perfect and it's a beautiful recording and it just requires a blend, that act of blending, that act of being the final act, the final point through which the sound moves, is a function of the production as an engineer. But right now, I just started to feel like I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not sitting for 13 hours in my studio and fixing your shit so that you can say produced by you and my name as mixer is buried in there. And I will name names. I don't need to because I've already approached these artists and say, you do that again, don't ever call me again.
Right.
And they've apologized, but it didn't fix the error, which was I made your shit recording amazing. Even though you can sing and even though you can play, you can't make records. You don't know how to close this thing.
Right.
And I do.
Right.
Credit me for it.
You've spent your life's work on
closing. It's all
audio.
about the end game, the closer. Who can close the record? Who can bring it across the plate? Everybody can fuck around in the middle of it. Everybody can be excited at the start. I'm excited at the end when it's really hard and the nuance is devastating. And you better find every single piece of it. Otherwise, that track will fail. But if you do find it, it will succeed. And that nuance at the end, those end games are exhilarating to me. And they're the hardest part. Me.
Yeah.
Wow, here. I feel like we need to raise a glass and take a moment.
Yes.
Limoncello.
Oh, delicious.
I'm a stockholder. I have 500 shares. I'm going to lay it out there right now.
Are you being
Bought
serious?
$22.
Amazing.
That is awesome.
You're funding all the studios in Nashville, so it's good.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I would have had to buy 50,000 shares. I only had $2,000 and I bought LaCroix stock.
That's incredible. Okay, we have one final topic to cover. And that is the future of production. I want to actually start with something that might not organically feel as though it might be a part of this topic, but I want to talk about boundaries and self-care. Because I do think that it's so closely related to getting to that point that Trina was just talking about, making sure that the final product is totally kick-ass and that the work that you do is work that you can do because you're fully invested in it. So if one of you would like to talk a little bit about how you are respecting yourselves, your bodies, your mental health, while you're moving through your work. Anyone?
Who wants to start?
You go, Rachel.
Yeah.
The only thing that came to mind for me was, and this is more in an engineering capacity than produce. Well, I mean, I guess it applies kind of too. Is during COVID, you're trying to tiptoe around the vibe of the session and trying to keep everyone's spirits up. But I remember being in the middle of when all of this was coming down in March, in the middle of a session, and I felt the feelings I was having about what was going on outside the building and everything was just so much that sometimes I just had to be honest and be like, dude, I'm wigging out right now, or I'm not in a good place, and so I don't know. I feel like that's translated a little bit in that I don't feel bad about kind of speaking up a little bit in these instances. For instance, I think I'll say I need to go outside and get like some fresh air for a second because I've been wearing a mask for 12 hours or whatever. Just speaking about how I'm feeling, which I never used to do in the middle of tracking. And my needs were always secondary to kind of what was going on. And when I'm in a different role and the players kind of do the same thing, I respect it 1,000%, and I think everyone being more respectful of how everyone's feeling and feeling okay to talk about it. I remember having a little round with the players the week before quarantine happened, kind of talking about this is how we're feeling right now and checking in with everyone. And it's been really nice. I felt like we all got closer. And I think, I kind of hope to be able to have that kind of closeness going forward. Once this is all lifted, like just being honest with each other, like how we're feeling in the middle of a session or.
Totally. That's awesome. Gaina, how about for you?
Well, I feel like the self-care thing has been a journey for me that I'm still really trying to figure out the perfect balance. Like 2 years ago, I threw out my back and I was like, what in the world? I'm way too young for this to be happening. And I just was like, I'm sitting here for hours on end, not taking care of myself and, just doing the grind. And I feel like there's a lot of, I felt a lot of, when I first started in Nashville, I almost felt like if I wasn't working all of the time, that I was not succeeding. And I remember, for first year in Nashville, working literally every single day, birthday, holidays, and, barely having anything to show for it. However, I learned so much and I just like really, really dove in and kind of just went headfirst into it. And I loved it. I learned, tons about tape machines, repairing tape machines, using tape. That wasn't something that I was familiar with before. Also the psychology of it all, getting to work with amazing producers later on in my career and kind of learning the psychology of it. And I think something that Trina said that just spoke to me heavily, is basically like the artist's problem is not yours. And it's not you to take on all of their individual things and being sort of separate from that. So I'm trying more and more. And one, obviously having a good chiropractor, and then two, having a good, team and friends around me, these women included, and realizing that like, just because it's happening and like, this year has been crazy with loss and I just experienced more, it's been a lot. And to realize that like how it's felt inside so much, you don't have to keep it all inside. It doesn't have to be inside. You can get to the point where you can see it in front of you, hold that drama and be like, that doesn't live inside of me. I don't own that. That is theirs. I see it for what it is. And I can move forward, because as soon as I try to take that stuff internally, it absolutely ruins my creativity. It is hard on my relationship. And I don't make time for myself. So to me, self-care is giant. I'm still learning the best way to go about it. However, that has helped me a lot, is to realize I don't have to own that pain. I have to be the empathetic source that captures it and be ready for that at all times.
That's awesome. Thank you for that.
Oh, so good.
Shawnee, how about for you?
Me next. Ooh. I think my self-care has been boundaries, but mostly setting realistic expectations, not of myself, but the people around me of me. Because when I dive into something, I actually don't want to have any boundaries. Like, I want to give it my all. I just got back from tracking a record in the middle of nowhere, North Carolina, and there was literally no internet. And then we did get like a little pod, but like I kind of just let my boyfriend and anyone that I knew, like I was like, well, I'm just not going to talk to you because my mind is completely in here. He's completely fine with that. I'm like, I worked my ass off. You can have me any hour of the day. Like, I'm all yours. And then when I get back from that, I sleep for 3 days and spend the entire week, you know, with my boyfriend and catching up and seeing friends. And I do that in a day-to-day thing. Like, you know, I will work until 4 a.m. I will pull more all-nighters than a 30-something-year-old person should. But I always the morning is always mine. And that's when I work out. That's when I meditate. That's when I do all my things. And so then you've got me for the rest of the day. And that's the only way that I've been able to manage it, is just like this. I'm all in. Okay, stop. I'm all in. Stop. So I can't multitask. I can't reply to text when I'm like hanging out with friends. So I don't know if that's worked in my benefit, but it's kept me sane. So
That's so great. Thank you for that. Trina, do you have anything to add on the self-care topic?
I don't really think I do, because my self-care came for me when I had my son, and suddenly everything changed, and it became about me and him and, well, my husband. He's around too. We like him. No, I'm a bit like Shawnee, where I'm boundaryless in the studio. You got me in there, I am all yours, and I intentionally ignore my entire life and do nothing but serve the record. But again, I'm there to serve the record and not the artist, because if you get in front of a microphone and sing me your song, you've given me your song. It's mine now. Emotionally, it belongs to me. It's attached to my inner landscape, and it speaks of my reality and my dreams and hopes. And so I have boundaries only insofar as I exercise. That's self-help. I always exercise so that I can smoke and drink and not feel guilty. But once I had my child, when I was 40, and he would come to the studio with me in a little, turtleback, and I'd stick him under the console. It became where I will not work. I can't work very late. I have to pick up my son from school, and it changed everything. And then I got old, and then boundaries were obvious. Like, of course I won't do that. That's ridiculous. I need to have a nap right now. And so yeah, but
That's awesome.
that's it.
That's so great. Thank you. Well, we've got like 5 minutes left, and gosh, this has been so robust and generous. Thank y'all so much for your comments and thoughts on all these things. Let's have a little lightning round of your favorite pieces of gear / technologies. Trina, let's start with you, actually, because I know that your gear, you mentioned before that you're a big analog gearhead. So share with us what your favorite piece of gear is right now.
A Neve 8068 48 channel recording console. And I would haul one down I-65 on my back if I could.
That is amazing.
that's awesome.
I love it. Who's next?
How do you go after that?
API.
Okay.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Trident.
Come
You
on.
go.
Come
What
on.
else? I know you've got more. Come on,
An
go,
A80.
go, go.
Fairchild. Neat.
Oh.
Come on.
I mean, all of those things. I'm like, yeah, I'll have any of those, please.
Yeah. Realistically, though, my Genelec 8358 monitors are absolutely fantastic.
I'm trying to get there on those.
I love it.
Yeah, for me, it's all monitors. Like, it's definitely things that I mean, that's not true, but that would be what I would spend money on first. Like, if I was to give any advice to up and coming engineers who are like, what gear should I buy? I'm like, borrow gear, or like get the plug-in for a little while. See if you actually like it, but you can't do your job if you can't hear.
Yeah.
So it's monitors or it's headphones, or preferably both. But there is no point in buying some weird niche compressor. Like, like rent it for the day and see if you even care. But like, if you can't hear, you can't hear. So that's
What monitors do you love right now, Shawnee?
I am actually saving up for one of the new Genelec pairs. Like, I really didn't like their first sort of digital thing. But then I've just been hearing such good things about
The Genelec SAM monitors are out of this fucking world.
Yeah.
I am not kidding. They are they're like brand new glasses for your ears. They're amazing in their nuance. I'm not going to say anymore.
No, I mean, I'm pretty much sold. I've gone and listened to them like a bunch of friends' houses and people that I really trust, and it's just that like I spilt wax all over these guys behind me, so they're a little bit unsellable. So I have to, you can tell like the candles on things, they all have like wax dripping down the front, and I'm like trying to like delicately get off.
Talk about
So,
a vibe. That's amazing.
I know.
Rachel, how
Anyway.
about for you?
Just a piece of gear.
Yeah. Or
Well-
software.
It's hilarious because the first thing that came to mind for me, and it's mainly because I've been doing a lot of tracking lately, is just a Bayer M160. That's like my little workhorse mic that I put on everything.
Love it.
It's not a Neve, you know, but I could mic a whole band, I think, with those and be happy. But it's my little, I don't know. That's the first thing that came to mind. It's not expensive. Anyone could go buy one.
That's
But-
awesome. I think
Totally.
especially helpful for up and comers in this conversation.
Totally. Yeah.
Um,
If people ask me to get mics, I tell them to get one of those.
Yeah.
Cool.
You can put it on everything.
How about you, Gina?
Talking about mics, I love the Chandler TG and the Chandler Red mic. I am pretty much obsessed with Chandler gear. I just love it. You know, it's after Abbey Road stuff, and it's been really fun to like track all drums through Chandler stuff and dig in that way. And also, you know, usually pairing like a vocal mic. It's interesting. The two are very different, but then potentially putting like the Red and a ribbon together, maybe even like a Coles or something. And same with the TG, and there's, you know, some tape emulation on them. And I've really loved digging into that lately, but monitors obviously are the biggest thing. I have PMCs, which I like a lot. The guy that I have mastering a lot of my stuff has PMCs, so it just kind of felt right. And I was listening to PMCs at RCA forever, and so it was kind of like a good transition for the home spot.
That's so awesome. I want to thank y'all, each of you, so much for being here today. I know that Jared is going to join us again and wrap us up, but wow, I'm so inspired. I know that everybody watching is so inspired. Y'all are serious heroes, and I couldn't thank you enough. Thanks to Folk Alliance for having us all as part of this conversation. I'm a big fan of Folk Alliance. And let's see. Oh, here he comes. Hey, Jared.
Hey, Mary. Wow. Incredible job, all of you. Thank you very much to all of our esteemed panelists here. And I just wanted to just give a special thank you to Mary for moderating. Thank you very much. You all did a wonderful job. Just a reminder that this session will continue to be available as a recording on Folk Unlocked platform all week long. Please take a moment to provide feedback about today's conversation by posting comments in the chat. Finally, Folk Unlocked is made available at a pay-what-you-can price point thanks to the generosity of donors. If you would like to support our work, donations can be made at folk.org/donate. That's it, everybody. Stay safe, stay connected, community, and we will see you all soon. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.